The Columbia River is the largest river in the Pacific Northwest region of North America, at 2,000 kilometers long. Its headwaters are in the province of British Columbia, and its basin flows through 7 states in the U.S., the main 2 being Washington and Oregon. Realizing the hydroelectric power of this river, Canada and the United States signed a treaty in 1964 that would benefit both parties. 3 dams would be constructed in Canada, the Duncan, Mica, and Keenly side, and 1 in the United States, the Libby Dam on the Kootenay River. These dams would serve as flood control and reservoir storage, allowing for more hydroelectric power to be generated downstream in the United States. The United States would pay Canada for the provided flood control, and Canada would also receive annual payments for half of the generated hydroelectricity. Although the intentions of this treaty were pure and many additional benefits were created, such as guaranteed irrigation for the United States, safe navigation of river traffic, and new recreational areas, repercussions have arisen that were not expected when the treaty was first ratified. Many of these repercussions were caused by the oversimplification of the treaty. It ignored the opinions of several different groups of people, including the First Nations population of BC, the Indigenous populations of the United States, and the Columbia River Basin residents. At the time of the treaty's ratification, all of these opinions were overlooked, as well as the environmental impacts. In 1964, they did not have as much insight on environmental factors as we do today. The land surrounding the newly built dams was inundated with water to create reservoirs for flood control purposes. While the United States benefited from this flood control, Canadian land was lost. As a result, not only was the ecosystem greatly affected, but the previous residents were displaced. Although the treaty addressed the displacement of basin residents, some say they were not adequately compensated. Not only were basin residents forced to relocate, but the land was agriculturally valuable to them as well as sacred to the First Nations population. This land held such value to basin residents because it was fertile and therefore had potential to increase the agricultural industry of British Columbia. Instead, a $5 billion agricultural industry was created in the United States. This was only possible because Canadian agricultural land was sacrificed in order to create reservoirs. Fish and wildlife in these newly flooded areas were negatively impacted. Fish in the Columbia River Basin regularly migrate back and forth between salt and fresh water. They require fresh water to lay their eggs. Because of the constantly rising and falling water levels in these reservoirs and the creation of the dams, it has been increasingly difficult for these fish, especially salmon, to migrate back to the fresh waters. Consequently, fish populations have dramatically decreased and will continue to decrease unless there is some intervention or a change to the treaty. In recent years, the Columbia River Treaty is a more urgent topic of discussion than it once was. The reason for this is because 2024 is the first year that any changes to the treaty can be made, but a 10-year notice is required. This means that 2014 is the first year where either the Canadian or American side can declare they want the treaty to change, continue as is, or end entirely. In 2014, no changes were made to the treaty. For a while, there was not much talk on the treaty's future whatsoever, but recently the United States have started to discuss some renegotiations. Despite these negotiations, the future of the treaty is still uncertain. It is hoped that a solution can be found where the treaty benefits can still be reaped, while simultaneously taking measures to rectify the past repercussions. Many programs have been set into place that are attempting to rectify these issues, such as the Columbia Basin Trust. This trust offers a portion of the treaty's earnings to the region affected by the flooding, and the Fish and Wildlife Compensation Program. Because this program is run by a board that is comprised of First Nations and public stakeholders, it is more accurately able to represent the opinions that were ignored in the Columbia River Treaty. Here is what Catherine Tenaesia had to say about what she hopes to see for the future of the treaty.
What I'm most hopeful about is the opportunity to have the salmon restoration. That is an important part for the Ktunaxa people. But now it's coming to the level of the people that are affected have the opportunity to be engaged also. I think that's extremely important.